Good Wednesday evening to everyone. Welcome to the meeting 128 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Industry and Technology. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the standing orders, pursuant to the motion adopted on Monday, April 8th, 2024, and the committee order of Monday, May 27th, 2024. We're resuming our study of the recent investigation and reports on Sustainable Development Technology Canada. Before starting, I would like to remind everyone to comply to the best practices in terms of the earpieces. Keep them away from the microphones when you're speaking in order to avoid feedback which can injure our interpreters. So please observe the directives on the card in front of you. And also I want to confirm with the clerk that the sound tests were carried out. They have been done before the beginning of the meeting. So thank you to you all for your collaboration. And I'd like to, first of all, welcome our witnesses for today, witnesses who are with us by video conference. We have Navdeep Bains, Veena Buller, Gianluca Cairo, former Chief of Staff, Department of Industry, and we also have Andrew Noseworthy, former Assistant Deputy Minister on Clean Technologies. They're all here by video conference, all four of them. We also have, from the Canada Clean Tech Alliance, in person here, we have Isabelle Dubé-Côté, President and Chief Executive Officer, Ecotech Quebec. Thank you for being here with us. We have Peter MacArthur, Chairman of the Board at the Ontario Clean Technology Industry Association. And from Smarter Alloys, Inc., we have Ibrahim Khan, Chief Executive Officer.
And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Mr. Bains for his opening remarks. And you have 5 minutes, Mr. Bains. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Navdeep Bains. From 2015 to January 12th of 2021, I served as Canada's Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry. I know there's been much conversation into the activity at Sustainable Development Technology of Canada, SDTC. However, I think it's important for us to first ground ourselves in the process and the roles. SDTC is an arm's-length organization established by an Act of Parliament in 2001. As Minister, my role, as outlined by the Act, was to make appointments to the SDTC board. These appointments were recommended through the fair, open, and transparent process brought forward in 2016 to allow more opportunities for all Canadians to serve their country. Under the new process, all positions are publicly listed on the GIC appointments website. Anyone can apply for the position on the website by submitting their CV and a cover letter. And after receiving applications for an appointment, a selection panel that included the Privy Council office with supports from across the government was struck. These panels conducted interviews and presented ministers with a short list of candidates. As part of the process, ministers would speak with prospective applicants before being formally recommended for an appointment. Finally, the minister would make a recommendation and the GIC would pass it. This open, transparent, and merit-based process was used for over 100 of my recommendations for GIC appointments. As has been testified numerous times, SDTC is an arm's-length organization that was created by an Act of Parliament in 2001. Under the Act, the Minister is to recommend 7 of the 15 board members, including the chair. And there is a funding agreement between ISED and SDTC. However, ISED is not responsible for the management and operations of the staff or board. Finally, I believe in the clean tech sector and the benefits it has brought to Canada. I am proud of the incredible people and companies that have made this sector in Canada a true global leader. Once again, I'm happy to be here and answer your questions. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Baines.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baines. I will now give the floor to Vina Buller. You have the floor.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. My name is Vina Buller, and I'm here today to help provide my assistance with respect to the ongoing study on Sustainable Development Technology Canada. I joined Sustainable Development Technology Canada, or SDTC, as Manager for Communications and Partnerships in November of 2018. I remained in that same position until my departure in April of 2021. As Manager, Communications and Partnerships at Sustainable Development Technology Canada, my primary responsibilities were communications focused. As I began my role in early 2019, my main responsibilities revolved around the construction and rollout of a team intranet, establishing new social media procedures for institutional SDTC accounts, and liaising with Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada, or ISED, on upcoming funding announcements. This focused on communications and logistics. As with any new role, fully integrating into the team at SDTC took roughly 1 month. There was a comprehensive onboarding process, which included organizational briefings, one-on-one meetings with various departments, sitting in on funding interviews, as well as various administrative and HR processes. I started in mid-November and was not fully integrated into the job until approximately January 2019. The process to appoint the new chair of SDTC to replace Mr. Jim Balsillie was underway when I joined the organization. Annette Verschuren was appointed chair in June of 2019. I was not consulted and was not a decision maker in Ms. Verschuren's appointment process, nor was I responsible for providing advice on policy matters, board appointments, or decisions around SDTC program delivery. During my tenure, SDTC leveraged a system of procedures and structures to manage appointments. Those responsibilities were primarily held by the CEO, Leah Lawrence, and the Vice President of Partnerships, Zoe Colebrook. Throughout my time at SDTC, I kept my direct supervisors, the Vice President of Partnerships and the Director of Communications, as well as the CEO, informed of any conversations I had with the Minister's Office or any other official within government. In my role, I never attended SDTC board meetings, had no operational responsibility in managing or providing advice on the appointment of an SDTC board director or allocating funds. Such matters would typically be under the purview of the CEO. The nature of my job, once again, was largely focused on communications. Any conversations I had with the minister's office were at the direction of my superiors. I always reported any communications with political staff back to superior SDTC officials. The nature of these conversations centered around information sharing, providing updates on upcoming funding announcements, and planning events. At no point did I provide advice on policy matters, board appointments, or decisions around program delivery. As you all know, as members of this committee, following testimony at the House of Commons Ethics Committee, the CEO resigned her position at SDTC. While my direct involvement in the matter at hand was limited, I look forward to answering any questions you may have. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Buller. Je passerai...
Thank you very much, Ms. Buller. I will give the floor to Mr. Cairo. You have 5 minutes.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, my name is Gianluca Cairo, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to appear before you as it relates to your study on Sustainable Development Technology Canada. My role as it relates to your study into SDTC is that I was Chief of Staff to the Minister of Innovation, Science, and Economic Development from the summer of 2017 to the summer of 2019. Minister Baines was a minister of ISET at that time, and SDTC was part of that portfolio. During my time in that position, there was an appointment process for the board chair of SDTC. It was run as part of a merits-based approach to appointments that was a joint effort between the Privy Council Office, the Prime Minister's Office, and officials at ISET. As I understand it, this was a normal public process that was followed across all governor and council appointments at the time. Ultimately, at the conclusion of that process, Annette Verschuren was appointed board chair of SDTC. Ms. Verschuren had previously been appointed to critical roles at the intersection of business and public policy by Prime Ministers Mulroney, Harper, and Trudeau. As an officer of the Order of Canada, and given her significant business experience generally and in the clean tech sector specifically, she was well suited for the position. The appointment was made in June of 2019, and I left my role as Chief of Staff a few weeks later in August. I respect the work of the committee and of parliamentarians. I know the work that is involved, and I appreciate what you do. Before I turn to your questions, I want to address the fact that there was a motion passed to summons me to attend today. I was disappointed and surprised to learn that I had been summoned. I had corresponded with the clerk repeatedly, and the clerk was aware that I had been in Australia on business when initially invited to attend. Upon my return, I reached out again specifically to confirm my attendance, which is when the clerk informed me that I had already been the subject of a summons for my attendance. I'm here voluntarily and cooperatively to help you complete your study. Although my role is limited in terms of the time and the scope of my involvement, I hope I can be of assistance to you, and I look forward to your questions. Let's see.
Merci beaucoup. Je passerai la parole à Monsieur Noseworthy.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, honorable members. I'm appearing before you today as a private individual, having retired from ISED in January after 40 years of public service. Within ISED, I worked on matters related to energy and clean technology, and as part of my duties, I was the department's liaison with SDTC, and I regularly attended board meetings and received board materials between 2017 and 2023. SDTC board meeting notes refer to me as being there by invitation. My objective in attending these sessions was to assist the board in understanding federal policy and program developments that may have relevance to its work. In doing so, I took my direction from the provisions of ISED's contribution agreement with SDTC, which states that federal officials must not be seen as exercising control or influencing decisions of that organization. In working with the board, I was also especially careful not to offer views or advice of any kind that could be seen to bias its operations, policies, or decisions. With respect to the appointment of Ms. Verschuren as chair, I had no direct role in this process, and as former Minister Baines has indicated, it was handled through the normal process for ordering council appointments between central agencies and minister's office. I did, however, have several conversations with Ms. Leah Lawrence, CEO at the time of SDTC, including seeking her assistance and encouraging applications and nominations for the position from within the clean tech community. As she reported to you, I did call her to advise her that an order in council had been issued appointing Ms. Verschuren to the position of board chair. We discussed Ms. Lawrence's concerns with respect to the appointment and the fact that the issue of Ms. Verschuren's potential conflict had been considered as part of the selection process. Indeed, we were both of the understanding that Ms. Verschuren had met with the Conflicts Commissioner to discuss the matter. On this basis, I indicated that I believed it would take another compelling reason for the decision to be reconsidered, but Ms. Lawrence was not forthcoming in raising other issues or concerns. Thank you. I look forward to discussing these matters with the committee and would be pleased to take your questions.
Merci beaucoup. Je passerai la parole à
Thank you very much. I would like to give the floor to Ms. Dubé-Côté for 5 minutes.
Merci to the committee members for hearing us today. My colleague Peter MacArthur and I are here today. Nous sommes ici aujourd'hui en tant que représentants de...
As representatives of the Canada Clean Tech Alliance to represent the clean technology ecosystem. The Alliance is a Canadian coalition of 22 associations representing more than 2,000 players in clean technologies throughout the country. The clean technology businesses are SMEs that develop products, services, or processes that help not only the environmental footprint of these companies, but also productivity of Canadian businesses. There's a growing demand for these solutions. We want to address urgently a crucial question, not only for the sector of clean technologies in Canada, but for the health and economy of innovation in Canada and its competitivity at a world scale, which are vital for the future of our country. The sudden stop without any alternative of funding decisions of technologies of or STDT since October 23 considerably affected innovation in Canada and caused significant damage. This break, triggered by allegations of a former employee and subsequent investigations, was initially foreseen to be resolved before December 31st, 2023. But 8 months passed by without any solution, and the situation is still not solved. Canada has regularly shown itself to be a leading figure in the sector of clean technologies in relation to the size of the country, contributing to 13% of main clean technology businesses in the world, despite our classification in terms of GDP, which is only 1.2%. Of the 13 Canadian businesses, which are amongst the 100 best businesses in clean technologies in the world in 2024, more than 3/4 were funded by STDC. The success is due partly to crucial support given by STDTC. However, our sector in clean technologies is facing important or major challenges. Over the last 8 months, many of these Canadian businesses that were most promising in the field of clean technologies, their employees and investors were left in a situation of uncertainty. Their projects, which were going to create valuable jobs to strengthen the economy of innovation and improve our environment, have been stopped. This disturbance has brought considerable problems, as a recent investigation showed with the participation of certain businesses in your respective ridings that took place 2 months ago. So only two out of 3 respondents said that there was a direct impact because of the stoppage of financing by STDC. Half of the respondents have projects that have been delayed or put in suspense. 1 out of 3 show that investors in venture capital and clean technologies have interrupted their investments.
Is going to resume funding for eligible projects. However, to mitigate the adverse effects Isabel has noted, we urgently request your committee support the following 5 measures. Number 1, prompt resumption of previously approved and committed to funding decisions. Restart funding now for existing projects. Funding is currently greatly delayed. Every day of delay can reduce the likelihood of success. The transition to National Research Council cannot be yet another delay in access to funding. Number 2, promptly resume the intake application process for new projects. Don't have STTC starting from a dead stop on new intake while the transition to NRC takes place. Number 3, expedite implementation of the recommendations. Please urgently implement the recommendations from the Auditor General's report, ensuring swift resumption of funding decisions. 4, streamline processes. While adjustments in processes may be necessary, it's crucial to avoid adding to the administrative burden for entrepreneurs under SDTC's already existing rigorous structure. We must streamline procedures wherever possible. That's a key point. 5, clear communication of timelines. We can't leave people hanging. Provide affected companies now with clear timelines and estimated waiting periods to help them plan and move forward. SDTC has been one of Canada's secret weapons in developing our clean tech innovation economy. SDTC has invested in over 500 companies, generating $3.1 billion in annual revenue, creating 24,500 jobs, and bringing 194 new technologies to market. Not only has it provided funding to bridge the gap from bench to commercialization of new technology, it's structurally required consortium partnerships and provided invaluable technology vetting that has allowed corporations and investors to deploy their capital into the clean tech innovation economy in Canada. We're at risk of losing our clean tech advantage. To quote Mike Andrade from Morgan Solar in Toronto, the SDTC freeze is terrible timing, particularly given the USA is increasing its support for companies like ours. We have had multiple calls from the Department of Energy and state organizations about finding opportunities if we relocate portions of our business there. In Canada, we've been struggling to realize the full potential of our innovation. But in clean tech, Canada has been winning in the innovation competition, thanks in part to SDTC. We thank you for your attention to this urgent matter and remain available for any helpful consultation and collaboration. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I'll now turn it over to Mr. Khan.
Good evening, Chair and members of this committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Ibrahim Khan. I'm the CEO of Smarter Alloys, a company founded on a patented technology that came out of my doctoral work at the University of Waterloo. We are an SDTC-funded company located in Cambridge, Ontario. One of our key innovations is applying our materials to capture waste heat and convert it into electricity. It's called a heat engine, and we have been targeting a huge inefficiency that we have in the world, which is waste heat with our materials and our technology. In a few short years, we've progressed our technology from a laboratory-size system, that's the size of a blender, to a proof of concept that is the size of a locomotive, or even the size of this room almost. We're scheduled to deploy this latest heat engine in the oil sands later this year to help reduce the carbon footprint out in Alberta. This progress would not be possible without programs like NRC IRAP, ERA, or SDTC. Clean tech transcends any one program, government, or country. Canada's support and funding drives progress that benefits not just Canadians, but all of humanity. However, clean tech entrepreneurs face unprecedented challenges today. Geopolitical tensions, labor shortages, the pandemic have all compounded a difficult task of advancing often hardware technology. Support for the clean tech commercialization is not just helpful, but critical for survival. Funding Canadian clean techs unlocks innovation, enables global leadership. It supports both our economic and environmental aspirations. Without adequate support, Canadian companies will face difficult decisions and impede our global progress. The high standard for technical due diligence conducted by Canadian funding agencies is universally recognized. Companies that receive funding undergo significant technical vetting, reassuring global investors and partners of their merit. I have experienced this firsthand. The work that this committee is doing is key in helping maintain this standard. However, time is of the essence, and as the resilience of Canadian innovators is now being tested, any further delay will derail progress that companies like mine have made. For example, any delay in us receiving our funding that's due from SDTC will significantly damage our ability to progress our technology in Alberta, causing irreparable damage. I'm encouraged by yesterday's announcement that funding will resume. This positive step is vital for the health of Canadian innovation and the economy, our global competitiveness, and sustainability of the clean tech ecosystem. I urge you to prioritize existing projects, resume due diligence on new projects and applications, expedite and implement the audit recommendations, and streamline the process and communicate the timelines. Finally, I further recommend increasing funding to accelerate the progress and mitigate damage that's been done related to these delays. Thank you for your attention and consideration. I'm available for any consultation and collaboration to ensure swift resolutions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khan. And before we start the discussion, I just want to clarify one small thing. Much has been said about how the challenges organizing and scheduling this meeting with some of the witnesses, and summons were adopted by the committee. But I just want to make it clear, from my understanding, Madame Vina Buller only received the invite last week, which makes the summons a little premature. So I just want to set the record straight, because in May, the invites were not sent to the proper email address. So just to clarify before we get started. And Mr. Perkins, I will yield the floor to you for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, witnesses. I just to address some of the comments briefly that the people from the industry said the delay was caused by corrupt directors, just to make sure of that, why the freeze was put on. My questions are for Mr. Baines. Mr. Baines, as a cabinet minister, the industry minister, as you said, for 6 years in the Trudeau government, you were a public office holder and subject to the Conflict of Interest Act, correct? You're on mute.
Thank you. All designated public office holders are subject to the Conflict of Interest Act.
Yes. So you're familiar then that Sections 4 and 6 say that public office holders cannot profit from their public office that they've been appointed to, correct?
Yeah, the Act is there and it's public knowledge.
And SDTC Act, which you as minister are responsible for, also says that directors of SDTC cannot profit, them or their family, from decisions they make in that role, correct?
Yeah, my understanding is that the Act was introduced, if I recall from my opening remarks, in 2001, and the Act provides very clear mandate for board members and management and how the programs are administered. And
no, not to profit. Leah Lawrence testified here, the former president of the Liberal Green Slush Fund, testified here before committee that around May of 2019, when you were a minister, you called her to tell her that you were going to replace the chair at that time, Jim Basili, with the new chair, and you gave her two names that you wanted her to review. Is that correct?
I don't recall a specific conversation, but I would say it's not uncommon for me to reach out to CEOs to engage them in the board selection process. Well, you suggested to her two names, one Annette Basharian, another individual who declined to participate because they had a pending conflict. Are you aware of that the two names that you provided both had a conflict? Again, just to highlight that during my tenure, there was over 100. I asked you about the 100, Minister. I asked you about this one. I'm preparing for this committee. I assume you looked at your notes. I'm saying I don't recall the specific conversation you're alluding to. That's convenient. But the point I'm making is there's over 100 GIC appointments. I know there are. That's convenient. I have limited time, as you know, so I'm not going to have a list of your 100 appointments. On this one that has been in the news for a year, I would have thought that you would have looked at your notes from your time in office. So I will take the testimony from the president as fact then, since you can't contradict that. So you then proceeded to appoint a number of other directors who are also conflicted, but both you and your chief of staff said that this process started in 2018. Is it normal when you start a process to replace a chair that you don't inform that chair that that process is ongoing? The process, as I've highlighted in my remarks, is an open and fair and transparent process that's publicly available to all individuals. So anyone that wants to apply can do so. As I also mentioned, asking about the application process, former minister, I wish you would answer the question instead of sticking to vague generalities. The issue here is that you asked them to consider two people that are conflicted against the Conflict of Interest Act and public office holder requirements. That then proceeded to be checked out. That the president reported back to ADM Noseworthy, former ADM Noseworthy, that one of them dropped out and that the other was conflicted and shouldn't be appointed. Now, I'm presuming that ADM Noseworthy put that up the food chain, and the word came back 3 weeks later, according to the president, that that's who you wanted appointed, even though she had a conflict. Why did you think it was appropriate to appoint somebody to this board who had a conflict? So there's two aspects to your question. The first is the process is very clear in terms of determining how individuals are selected. This is an open, public, fair, merit-based, transparent process. That's not my question. With respect, that's not my question. As I mentioned, secondly, all designated public office holders are subject to the Conflict of Interest Act.
I already
and they have an
stated that.
obligation-
Why
they
aren't
have
you
an
answering the
obligation to
question?
follow
Why are
that
you
act.
obfuscating about a conflicted director who ended up running a corrupt board that resulted in over $76 million of taxpayer money being taken from the taxpayers and voted to their own companies?
As I've said, there was a very clear process in terms of selecting the individual. It was a very open and fair and transparent
It's fair
process.
if you're a liberal.
Ms.
You
Verschoor.
recommended her to the governor and council. I would ask you, were you aware that Andre Lise-Matteau, who you also put on the board, voted for $42 million to her companies? Were you aware that former Liberal staffer and Trudeau organizer Steve Kukucher, you put on the board in this fair and open process, who voted his companies more than $25 million of taxpayer money? Are you aware that you appointed Guy Ouimet from Quebec, who voted for $4 million in this fair and open process for his own companies? This is your legacy as Minister of Industry, that you set up a $1 billion slush fund for the Liberal Party, that people could feather bed their own investments and break the law by furthering the value of their investments in companies using taxpayer dollars. Is that what you intended to do?
As I indicated in my opening remarks, I left left cabinet on January the 12th of 2021, so I'm not sure which appointments were before or after that. I would also indicate again the
Boy,
process.
it's great to have
is very
amnesia,
open and
isn't it?
fair.
Mr. Perkins, your time's out. Please let the witness respond. Mr. Baines, I'll let you respond.
Yeah, I just again want to reiterate that all designated public office holders have an obligation to hold themselves to a certain standard. And with respect to Ms. Verschoor, her credentials were well known. She received the Order of Canada. She's an individual that was well respected in the clean tech sector. And I understand correctly, she served under Mr. Flaherty as part of his Economic Advisory Committee in 2008, and was also appointed to stick under Mr. Harper as well. So again, she's an individual that worked for previous governments and again was well known within the business community, particularly in the clean tech sector.
Thank you, Mr. Baines. I'll now turn it over to MP Area.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Buller, I understand this is a very busy time in your personal life. Where are you calling from?
Yes, I actually received the summons the day before my wedding, and so I'm here today. I've made every effort to make myself available today, although I'm on my honeymoon.
Congratulations on that. Which part of the world you're calling from?
I'm in Vernon, British Columbia.
Oh, okay. Congratulations, and thank you so much for making the efforts to appear before the committee today. That shows the respect you have for Canadian Parliament and our parliamentary process. Mr. MacArthur, you mentioned 5 things that needs to be done, including prompt resumption and also resuming intake of application, expedited implementation of Auditor General's report. Number 5 was clear communication, but I want to focus on number 4. Recommendation number 4, you said streamline the process. You said we have to make adjustment to the rigorous processing structure currently STDC has. Can you elaborate on that?
I can tell you that when clean tech companies are applying to SDTC, it is often with trepidation that they go forward with their applications because they know how difficult and rigorous it will be. But in that process, we want to make sure that any enhancements to the process do not put additional burden on those companies so that they're further burdened and it prevents us from executing and having the innovation come to market.
The fact that so many companies have been successfully financed by SDTC through that rigorous process and have been successfully implementing, like Mr. Khan's company. Anyway, there's always scope for improvement. I'll come back to you. Mr. Khan, you said your project went from lab to concept, proof of concept. Now the project that you are implementing in oil sands, is it commercialization part?
It's a pilot we're hoping to ultimately sell to our partner. So it's on the precipice of commercialization.
Okay. So you have gone through the entire process of SDTC. Based on your experience, Obviously, you must have received funding from different agencies also at the initial stage in addition to STDC. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, you also went through the process within SDTC. With your experience of dealing with SDTC, are there anything that you suggest when the operations are resumed? Any changes you suggest to the current? Of course, we also want that your funding be released immediately. But once it is done, are you suggesting any changes to the processing techniques there?
It's a lengthy process. I think from start to finish, for us to receive our funding was almost a year. And a year is a lifetime in the startup world. So if there is a way to shrink that timeline, that would be, I think, wonderful. And I think it was related to often lack of resources. So there's only so many files a manager could have. So I think if you can fix the lack of resources, you can maybe accelerate the funding.
When you look at the ecosystem of the entire clean tech funding in Canada, is there any gaps that needs to be addressed? If I am not wrong, 30 to 50% of all the clean tech funding is in the form of grants. Personally, I would have preferred a repayable loan, 0% even so. So is there anything there, do you see any gaps in the ecosystem of funding clean technologies in Canada today?
So clean tech funding is often hardware in nature, and that takes a lot of time. And so it's not like a software which within months you may be commercial. We've been working with our materials technology for over 10 years now. And we have commercialized it in the medical device space, but the clean tech space is extra difficult. So I think having that patience is necessary. And so there may be, I don't know if it's a gap, if I call it a gap, but the grant funding helps support that chasm that is treacherous for entrepreneurs. So that would be good to kind of backfill.
Thank you. Back to Mr. MacArthur. You know, STDC now is going to be part of IRAP. Is there any changes you suggest for the corporate structure when it relaunches itself, or it should be taken away into some other mode or some other structure?
Just 1 second, please. So, you know, we think that if the clean tech expertise at SDTC is going to be preserved, and that's very key because it helps the funders, it helps the investors, it helps the corporations that we're working with. If the funding is going to recommence quickly, and if the administrative process, which I was talking about earlier, is not augmented for clean tech entrepreneurs, we think it could be quite effective. But we need to consult with our members and collaborate with them to see what their thoughts are.
One last question to you. You know, as a part of Clean Tech Alliance, you know the entire ecosystem very well. I think the numbers you guys mentioned is about 500 companies with revenue of $3.1 billion, 25,000 jobs, etc. Again, the same question what I asked Mr. Khan, is there any gap in the ecosystem that needs to be filled?
I'm glad you asked that. So seed stage funding can be a challenge in Canada for early stage companies. As my colleague, Mr. Khan, mentioned, it's a capital intensive process, and it's hard to track that capital early days before there is any revenue. Seed stage is absolutely an issue. I would say also scaling for hardware companies is a real challenge. Again, very capital intensive. Project finance for first of kind projects, very difficult the whole world over. And if you want to launch a new technology like the ones that Smarter Alloys has or some of the other companies in your ridings, it's very difficult to get funding when it's the first of kind.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Monsieur Garon, la parole est à vous pour 6 minutes.
You have the floor for 6 minutes. Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you for the witnesses for being here with us today. Mr. MacArthur, I want to quote you. You said that SDTC was a very efficient, effective organization, and you recommend that as soon as possible we can reinstate funding for projects that had already been funded. I'm completely amazed by the defense of this fund that the Liberals are doing. There's nothing partisan that we're doing today. It's an organization whose sins are multiple, violating 3 laws, dozens of irregularities documented by the Auditor General. So it's not a partisan situation. I understand that you said that this is an efficient organization because the industry needs funding and you need this funding. Now, in the Auditor General's report, it said that the foundation had rejected projects because of particular risks, while they recommended other projects that had the same risks, and that selection of projects was done against the recommendations of expert. So for the public, for an intelligent informed person who looks at the situation, what you're asking is to bring funding back for projects that were funded possibly to the detriment of other projects that included the same risks and that weren't recommended by experts. So if you're a taxpayer and you look at you're watching the committee today, do you think your recommendation is reasonable?
Taxpayer. So thank you for that question. And we're not here to suggest that any of the recommendations should not be followed. In fact, we suggest the recommendations be thoroughly followed and the rigorous process be applied. We're here to recommend that it be re-implemented as soon as possible on a judicious basis that respects those rules and regulations and processes.
Si vous me permettez, vous avez demandé à ce que les...
If you allow me, you asked that the projects whose funding was already allocated be funded. The Auditor General's report said that some projects carrying the same risk were not funded because of recommendations of experts. So you're possibly asking that we reinstate funding of businesses for whom the funding decision had been irregular. Did I understand that clearly? Because a reasonable person would wish that the whole process be started again, the whole allocation process or awarding process.
So thank you again for that follow-up question. We want the processes to be respected. We want the companies that qualify to get funding. We want that 13% of Canadian, of the world's clean technology companies that are in the top 100 get funded and can grow and prosper throughout Canada and create all those amazing jobs for the future. We don't want it to be not respected. We want those rules and regulations to be respected.
Dans ce cadre-là,
So I'm interrupting. You'll understand that I don't have much time. I would like you to review your recommendation that's not compatible with what you've just said. So we have dozens of pages of irregular activities, which mean that the Auditor General has been working on this for 8 months. And when Minister Champagne was made aware of what was happening, the funding was interrupted. And so the deficient management, to say the least, and the consequences that followed, do you think that this is harmful to the environmental cause?
I'm not sure I completely understood the question, but...
Écoutez, c'est à cause de la mauvaise gestion.
It's because of the poor management of the fund and because of the irregularities that the funding had to be interrupted. My interpretation of that is that there are environmental consequences to these irregularities. There are environmental consequences to the fact that the industry department let it go on for so long and that organization followed none of the ethical rules that the law dictates. So do you agree with me that these irregularities that made the funding end have negative consequences for something like fighting against climate change?
Period of 8 months where there has not been funding, some of the beneficial impact that could have been achieved by those clean technologies has not been allowed to occur.
Merci beaucoup. Il me reste combien?
Thank you very much. How much time do I have left, Chair? I'd like a question to Mr. Baines. Mr. Baines, your department, we've been listening to what you've said. You were responsible for nothing. You were above everything in a cloud. Everyone was responsible for everything else except for you. But you did have a responsibility. You're responsible for your department that had the right to effect audits to make sure that the funding agreements were respected and also that the policy in terms of conflict of interest and ethics was in conformity. So how many audits were affected with SDTC audits that would have let you be aware of these irregularities that the Auditor General said much earlier? How many audits were initiated? Thank you very much for your question.
With respect to SDTC, as I've said before, it's an arm's length organization that has clear rules in place based on.
Monsieur Baines, combien d'audits?
Mr. Baines, how many audits? The Auditor General said 0. There were none. Mr. Gao, could you be careful, please? I'm thinking about the interpreters. It's a figure, Mr. Baines. How many audits did you order when you were minister? I don't need you to repeat the law. We know the law. How many audits did you order?
What I'm trying to say, through you, Chair, to the parliamentarian, is that the legislation which the House passed in 2001 clearly provides a mandate for SDTC and how it should govern itself.
Zéro audit, Monsieur Baines.
Abide by those rules.
0 audits, Mr. Baines.
Messieurs, quand même.
So, gentlemen, colleagues, it's important to let the witnesses answer. Thank you. Mr. Massé.
Chair, and thank you for the witnesses being here. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the SDTC employees that were whistleblowers that did this work. They also had to live with their families, having to go through their reputations dragged through the mud, publicly maligned and humiliated by SDTC spokespeople, not backed up by the minister with regards to the real allegations, having to live through the Raymond Chabot Grant Thornton report that basically tried to dismiss them, having to them release the Osler report, which again proved them to be correct. They had to live through not having a union. They had to live through losing salary, pensions, benefits. They had to live through putting non-disclosure agreements together. They had to live through the corruption at the board of directors that actually intimidated them individually. And we have 2 sets of witnesses here today, in my opinion. The first set is the ones that want to cover their asses, and the second one is the group that want the public spigot to be turned on. And nobody would actually raise the issue of the workers in going forward on this. I'm absolutely, utterly disgusted because this Auditor General report would not even have been done from those workers. And I have emails from their workers, some that had to leave their position during a pandemic with no job because of the culture of intimidation and fear that was set there. So we're supposed to somehow set things up because we can magically find proper board members right now that don't get the benefit of being assigned to a type of accountability that hasn't been done. And at the same time, nobody really cares about them. All the resources and time, and tomorrow will be in the House of Commons as well, and nobody could talk about them and their families. Nobody can talk about how do we go forward to protect them more. At least that's one thing I've been asking for repeatedly. If any of the witnesses here followed any of the testimony, they would know Chair. That I brought this up multiple times.
One second, sorry, Mr. Massey.
I don't mean to interrupt. I know Mr. Massey's on a roll here, but I wanted to ask him to maybe stop yelling because I know that the interpreters are sensitive to that and that there's injuries that can happen. I know he's very passionate. I get that, but maybe he can either sit back from the microphone or stop yelling. Just to protect our interpreters.
Mr. Turnbull, I was just about to tell the clerk to make sure that if there are issues with for the interpreters with the level of volume from the members or the witnesses, to let me know and I'll intervene. So I note it, but you may continue, Mr. Massey.
Thank you. I'll let my record for supporting workers and labor stand its course versus a parliamentary secretary any day of the week. And I would tell you that on top of what's taking place, well, he thinks it's funny. He's been smirking the entire time I was walking, so maybe that's why I've raised my voice, because he sat there smirking through me raising the issues of these workers. And that's an issue that I want to raise now with Mr. MacArthur. What particular has your organizations and companies done to help these workers that have come forward? You haven't mentioned in your 5 recommendations anything for them, but has any of the companies that have been receiving SDT funding, any of the groups and organizations, Mr. Khan, that have actually come together and said we should do something for the workers and their families? I didn't hear any of that. Has any of that been discussion? Have you heard of that? Or just basically just restart everything and let the actions have taken place where people have lost jobs, reputations, or are now clinging on to employment as they have to go to another agency?
Thank you for your question. I would say that we're here representing the Canadian clean tech sector, and we're trying to represent the workers that are in those companies, in your riding and other people's ridings, that are being impacted by the lack of funding that's been frozen and has interrupted those companies. Obviously, we're very empathetic to the situation the workers at SDTC have been through. Some of them are friends.
Yeah, and you know what? You're not doing a good job of that, because your workers that you say you're representing right now, the only reason that they're not getting more projects and more movement right now is because a corrupt environment took place while everybody stood by and watched. And nobody in this term of this process has offered any solutions or importance related to this matter publicly or elsewhere. I've checked for that. So if you want your workers that you represent, maybe you could, your organizations can show some support for the workers that actually came forward. To Mr. Baines, it's good to see you. It's been a long time. I do want to go towards this issue with yourself, and can you explain during the process, was there any direction that you received or directive with regards to workers' rights, selecting board members that had experience dealing with the issues of ethics and so forth? There seems to be a series of issues here. Was there any direction given to that process? Obviously, we cannot undo a lot of the things that have taken place now, but if you have any recommendations or remorse with regards to the board selection that led to the abuse of employees, and lastly, these employees at least will be part of a group at NRC now, but they didn't have that protection. Is there any recommendations that you would have that would do differently to protect workers that are susceptible to political appointments?
Thank you very much for your question, and great to see you virtually. I think the last time I was in committee was in 2020, so that was the last time we had an interaction on the committee here at INDU. You raise a good point, and I would say with respects to the process, it was open to everyone, Mr. Massey. This was listed on the website, so any individual that wanted to apply for this role could do so, and I'm hoping that people take this opportunity to recognize these are public processes that individuals are encouraged to apply. It's open to everyone, and we want people from different experiences, as you mentioned, from labor, for example, all different aspects to be included in this process. So I want to thank you for highlighting that.
Do you remember if you had any labor appointees in that process?
I don't recall who put up their hand and how many people applied, but I do know that it was available and open to everyone, and that it was a public process. All appointments are actually listed on the GIC website.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Massé.
Thank you very much, Mr. Massé. Mr. Cooper, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Baines, yesterday the Auditor General released a damning report that ripped SDTC, or the Liberal Green Slush Fund, to shreds. $120 million in taxpayers' dollars that went out the door improperly, 186 cases of conflicts of interest, $76 million that was funneled by board members that you appointed to companies that they had interests in. And so in the face of that damning report, do you stand by the appointments that you made to the SDTC board?
I think the process, Mr. Chair, through you to the parliamentarian, was open, fair, and transparent. It included the Privy Council office as well.
I asked you, Mr. Baines, do you stand by those appointments, yes or no?
I stand by the process by which the selections were made. It was an open, fair, transparent, merit-based process.
Mr. Baines, you appointed board members who then rigged the system to funnel money, $76 million, to pad their own pockets instead of investing SDTC funds in legitimate investments. In the face of the damning Auditor General's report, am I to take it you have no regrets, no remorse, you accept no responsibility?
No, what I am saying is that the process that occurred in selecting the individuals for Sustainable Development Technology Canada has been followed by all the appointments that I've made under the Governor and Council. And that means it's an open process.
In other words, you take no responsibility. That's what I take from your answer. And so now that you've made it clear that you have no regrets, that you don't take any responsibility, that speaks to, frankly, the rot and corruption of this government, I want to ask you a little bit about the decisions around appointments to the SDTC board. Did you make those decisions on your own? Yeah, I understand there's a process, but at the end of the day, did you make the final call?
You're correct. There is a process that...
I asked you, did you make the final call, yes or no? Yes or no?
And so, as I was saying, there's a process. And
interested in the process. I'm familiar with the process, but I asked, did you make the final decision? Did you have the final say, yes or no? Or are you passing responsibility to someone else, perhaps the Prime Minister's office? So which is it, Mr. Baines?
So as I was saying, there's a process, and through that process, a recommendation is made, and that process
this is just ridiculous. You're deliberately obfuscating a very simple question that I asked that goes to your responsibility as Minister for appointing all of these corrupt directors to the SDTC board, and that is, did you have the final say, or did someone else have the final say, perhaps someone in the PMO?
So the way this unfolds is that the Privy Council office is engaged in this selection process. They make a recommendation, and based on that recommendation, we take the appropriate steps.
Did you communicate with the PMO with respect to these appointments?
The Privy Council office is involved in this process, along with a number of other government departments, and they.
Why does the PMO have an appointment secretariat? So I presume you were communicating with someone in the PMO. Who were you communicating with?
Again, this is a public process. People can
ask, who were you communicating
with? It's open
with?
to everyone. And so it's a committee, a panel, that looks at the number of individuals that put their name forward. They go through an interview process. Their CV is examined.
Does the PMO have any say, yes or no? Would you just answer one question? Did the PMO have any say, yes or no?
So again, sorry, I'm trying my best to answer. I keep on getting interrupted. What I was saying is that in
being interrupted, Mr. Baines, because you're not answering basic questions. You're trying to avoid accountability.
Mr. Cooper, that's all the time you had, and I'll give a few seconds to Mr. Baines to answer the questions that were asked.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that it was a robust process in terms of determining who is selected. I made over 100 recommendations.
What a joke of an answer. It's ridiculous.
Colleagues, okay, that's sorry, Mr. Baines, to interrupt, but please, we at this committee, Mr. Cooper, we stay respectful. There are certain ways that we can present arguments and do it in a respectful way.
Point of order.
Point of order, Chair.
Point of order.
I think Mr. Perkins first on a point of order.
I would ask that if the committee have respect, that it starts with the witnesses and the witnesses answering the questions and not putting a recording on with one line for an hour.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's a point of order. I think that's a comment, Mr. Turnbull.
Mr. Cooper called the witness a joke.
I said,
and I think he should retract that comment. It is counter to parliamentary decorum, and he knows that.
The minister's answers
Mr. Cooper, I'll give the floor to you. I agree with Mr. Turnbull, so I'll let you correct the record.
What I said is that the minister's answers were a joke, and they were. He gave no answers.
Okay. I'll just ask MPs to thread carefully, and I don't accept at this committee that we insult witnesses. So be very careful going forward.
Former ministers insulting taxpayers.
Mr. Cooper, you don't have the floor. I'm the chair here, so I would ask you to speak when I give you the floor. And now, on that note, I'll turn it over to MP Turnbull. The floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I know that STTC in the past has played an important role in the innovation ecosystem when it comes to clean tech. I also know that Canada has, or at least I think has, a clean tech kind of advantage in the sense that, as we build a more sustainable economy and work towards scaling up the innovative solutions that we need to fight climate change and have a stronger, more resilient economy, SDTC seemed to play a pretty key role in that ecosystem. I wanted to go to Ibrahim or Mr. Khan, if you would maybe comment just on what sort of role in that ecosystem SDTC was really playing up until the point that we suspended funding.
So SDTC evolved over the time that we received support. There was a seed stage fund, I believe, providing seed stage funding, and then we were later on in the cycle because our technology was a little bit more progressed from a seed stage technology. SDTC has been, along with other funding agencies like ERA and NRC IRAP, bridging that gap between innovation that comes out of a university like ours to commercial application. And so that is very important because SDTC's, as well as other government funding agencies' rigorous due diligence on the technical merits of our technology was important, played an important part in us engaging partners abroad because they recognize the rigorous due diligence that is done from a technical standpoint, so that we can reduce the hurdles of trying to get funding from partners as well as investors abroad.
Thank you for that. Ms. Dubé-Cote, I hope I said your last name right. Would you like to comment on the same question, just the sort of role within the innovation ecosystem that SDTC played? And was that unique? Do we need to preserve that, notwithstanding obviously the issues that the committee members are concerned about rightfully, that there's some practices that we're not upholding the highest governance standards. But I want to kind of understand the comments that are made around ensuring that SDTC can continue to function in the future under better governance framework and how important that is. And I think your testimony today, and maybe I'll go to you next, Mr. MacArthur, about the key role that SDTC was playing.
Sure. So from various exchanges through various forums with different actors in the ecosystem, we've had, they have shared many ways in which SDTC has been helpful. And we mentioned earlier about the expertise, which is really something that both on the company side help as recognition, as was just mentioned, but also on the investor side, sometimes additional investors would come in because SDTC, was there to also help and bring expertise on the technical front. So that was, part of the advantages that were mentioned. And as I mentioned earlier, out of the 100 companies worldwide that are the most efficient clean tech companies, 13 of them are from Canada, and 3/4 were financed by SDTC. So there are a lot of companies. We surveyed, a lot of companies through the last couple of months, and various reasons came up front, in addition to the financing, but additional support and expertise that SDTC brought to those companies, making us very competitive internationally.
That's great. Thank you for that. Mr. MacArthur, do you want to sort of comment on that as well?
I think my colleagues have done a good job here, just commenting that the valley of death that often exists when a company comes out of a lab and then tries to commercialize is one that exists in many technologies, not just clean tech. Hardware is particularly difficult, as Mr. Khan indicated. There's large capital expenditure. It takes a long time to sell into regulated industries. You need access to lab equipment and other technical equipment. So it has been crucial to have that funding there. Likewise, Emissions Reductions Alberta also has access to many scientists that help vet that technology, like those at SDTC, that gives comfort to investors, venture capital firms, and in fact customers that are looking at buying and investing in those technologies as part of the consortium process that exists at SDTC.
So, I mean, I know that you've said multiple times already, and I think there's some other members that agree with you, that resuming the flow of funds to help continue to scale up and provide the financial support for companies within the ecosystem that we're trying to help build, which I think is a key role that the Government of Canada has played for 20 years through SDTC. And so I think your testimony today is helpful in understanding why we need to get things moving again, and notwithstanding again the gravity of some of the governance issues within the organization that have surfaced through the Auditor General's report. But so I really do appreciate your testimony. And like, how developed is Canada's current clean tech market? Like, are we globally competitive right now? And if SDTC didn't resume funding, do you think that that would start to dwindle? Like, what impact would it have? Mr. Khan, maybe I'll ask you, and then Mr.
Sure. I mean, like Peter has mentioned, we're punching we're more advanced than most international competitors out there. We have 10 top or more than 10 top clean tech companies in the world that are recognized, and we continue to have fantastic innovation that comes out of our own labs at universities as well as other institutions that can be very impactful. So I think Canada is wonderfully positioned with talent, innovation in order to really solve this clean tech problem in an economical way. So any cutting of support will slow that down. I'll let Peter maybe continue.
24,500 employees at Canadian companies have received support from SDTC. That's helped them become competitive on the world stage and generated jobs all across the country. High-paying jobs, the future-based jobs. So that has absolutely been beneficial. But certainly you've got to respect the Auditor General's report and make sure it's compliant and make sure it makes sense. Like you, we're taxpayers, and we want to make sure that this is done effectively and efficiently. But it's helping in a difficult part. Commercializing innovative technologies isn't easy. It's highly risky. It's hard to get risk capital to go there. It's important that we have risk capital going there through effective means.
Merci beaucoup. Sorry, Mr. Turnbull. Monsieur Garon, la parole.
Mr. Garon, you have the floor.
Mr. Van Bynen. Sorry.
Did I hear comments from Mr. Viss that made accusations of corruptions to these individuals?
No. In any event,
well, who are you looking at
please, members, this is not question period, and in the House of Commons, there is no heckling at this committee, and there is no interrupting other members when they have the floor and starting to respond to witnesses. I'll ask you to stay put and respectful while witnesses are speaking. And Monsieur Garon, la parole est à vous pour 2 minutes 30.
Mr. Garon, you have the floor for 2 minutes. Thank you, Chair. It's always intimidating to speak after my colleague, Mr. Turnbull, who's part of a government that will, by 2035, invest $85 million in the oil industry, that's bought a pipeline that has important links to the oil industry. Mr. Turnbull is part of a party who has invested about $1 billion over 8 years for clean tech and 85 for oil. And we attributed this money to a foundation that is now has been where dozens of wrongdoing has been identified on about 80 projects. 1/3 of them have irregularities. So I'm asking Mr. Turnbull's question: if there hadn't been all these wrongdoings, and the minister had not suspended funding, I'm asking the question to Ms. Isabelle Judet: how many fewer clean tech projects would we have with suspended funding now? I can't answer that question. I don't have all the information. Would you be able to supply a written response later to the clerk? Could you check? Well, I can do some research, but I don't have that information at this point. What I can tell you is that I'm not here necessarily to comment on the processes that were put in place. I'm here to give you a picture of the industry. the situation is clear. There was wrongdoing. Minister Champagne had to suspend the funding. You're all here today to tell us that the funding of the project, that supports about 30,000 jobs in Canada, this funding has been suspended because of wrongdoing. So we appreciate your industry. I'm saying that it's really upsetting to see a Liberal defend such inadequate management of funds by alluding to the fact that we're actually kind of questioning your role, because in your industries you lost risk capital, and that's what we need for the industry of the future. So I'm wondering if it would be possible to give the clerk this information, how many jobs were lost because we had to suspend the funding and the number of projects, and that would be really interesting, and it might allow us to suggest that these funds, the Quebec portion, be given to Quebec, a true jurisdiction where we really fight against climate change and where there are not such scandals at the moment, and can determine what projects respond to the aspirations of Quebec. Mr. Massey, you have the floor now.
One of the reasons the Auditor General noted that she would look into this is Sustainable Development Technology Canada is entirely funded through public money. With that comes an expectation that it holds the highest standards for ethical practices. And meanwhile, when you talk to the workers that came forward, what we found out was they often had to move provinces. They faced sexism, racism. A bunch were fired at different times. There was special persecution in the eyes of them, a minority group in Quebec that faced some of the worst of the practices. So, Mr. MacArthur, I go back to you. With regards to the culture and the workers right now, what due diligence is your sector going to do for those workers that are now moved to another department to ensure the proper decisions are made? Some of those people actually fought for the people that got some of the funding that you're here asking more for, which is entirely public money, because they saw the corruption, they saw the mismanagement, and they saw others that were doing improper practices getting money that would have gone to more of your clients that were doing the right thing. So what do you say about that situation? Is it how fast do we turn this on at the expense of the culture and, more importantly, the families that still live with this legacy?
Thank you, Mr. Massey. We're here representing the clean tech sector. We're not here representing SDTC. We're empathetic to the situation that those employees suffered, and we feel for them. And all I can say is we're here to talk and say that the clean tech sector needs funding if we want to see it continue to flourish as it has.
So there's nothing you can say to offer that, and I think this is rather unfortunate because I know that you've mentioned a number of times about projects in our ridings, which is a code word out here for basically saying that it's your own interest as a member of Parliament in the district you have. And I can tell you, mine and my district want fair, ethical practices for the workers that actually make the decisions for the people that you're supposed to be representing right here. And that would be the first thing for accountability. And this is why I find, quite frankly, Mr. Chair, as I conclude my remarks here, this rather appalling, because until we fix the culture that was left over from SDTC, good decision-making will never take place.
Merci, Monsieur Massey. Monsieur Perkins, la parole.
Thank you, Mr. Massey. Mr. Perkins, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to try another route here. Mr. Noseworthy, you were the former Assistant Deputy Minister that attended during your time all of the board meetings as the observer from the Industry Department and on behalf of the Minister of Industry. And the former CEO of the Green Slush Fund, Leah Lawrence, testified to this committee that she expressed her concern about the appointment of the conflicted Annette Vacherian to you and asked you to convey that up the line before the appointment was made. Did you convey that concern to anyone?
My understanding, sir, is that the potential conflict with Ms. Verschuren was well known as part of the process. My understanding is she disclosed it
Here we go
herself as part of
again.
that process.
You did this the last time you appeared before the committee. You had severe amnesia, and you also obfuscated. It's a simple question. Who did you tell up the line that the CEO of the Green Slush Fund had a concern? Did you tell anyone, yes or no?
I had regular discussions with my deputy minister about the overall process of SDTC.
Did you tell the deputy that the CEO of the Green Slush Fund was objecting to the appointment of that chair?
I am aware that the deputy minister was aware of the potential conflict with Ms. Van Schuren.
You're aware that he's aware, and he became aware through you. So what did the deputy do with that?
I can't comment.
Did you ever speak to the minister's
that
office with regard to it?
I did not have any discussions with Minister Baines or his staff about this.
Ms. Bueller, the CEO of the Green Slush Fund, also testified that she asked you to convey to the staff in the minister's office the concerns about the conflict. Who did you talk to in the minister's office?
It would not have been my role or responsibility to comment or provide advice on appointments. The CEO did ask me.
But you were the government relations person. The CEO reported in this committee as your boss that she asked you to speak to the minister's office. Did you defy your boss and not do what she asked?
So just to clarify, my role was communications, not government relations. But yes, the CEO did ask me to convey the potential for a conflict, which I would have done at the time.
And who did you do that to?
It would have been a policy lead.
Who?
At ISED. I don't recall who
You
it
don't
would have
recall.
been at that time.
In the minister's office. Somebody who reported to Mr. Cairo, you reported that to.
Correct.
And did you speak to anyone in the PMO? You formerly worked in the PMO only a few months earlier. You're telling me you never spoke to anyone in PMO appointments who were responsible, not the PCO, for running this process?
Once again, it would not have been my role or my place to provide any sort of guidance or advice.
So you're saying you didn't speak to anyone in the Prime Minister's office about this at any time?
Not that I recall. I did not speak to anyone in the Prime Minister's office.
Will you go back in your
notes
and supply us with the person in the minister's office who you spoke to? Mr. Cairo,
I know.
Did the policy person in your office ever report to you about the objection of the chair, the president, about the chair?
Mr. Perkins, I left in August of 2019.
She was appointed in June of 2019, so you were still chief of staff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So Ms. Verschuren was appointed through a process that involved.
I know what the process is. I don't need you to repeat Mr. Baines' talking points again. Who in your office told you that the CEO objected to the appointment of this chair because there was conflict? And did you have that report?
Mr. Chair, I do not recall any conversation around.
Boy, there must be something in the water at that ISED office where everybody has amnesia. Mr. Noseworthy has amnesia. Mr. Baines has amnesia. You have amnesia. Ms. Bueller has amnesia, who she talked to. If I wouldn't swear, you all work together in the Liberal Party and are covering up for something. Now, Mr. Baines, are you telling me that nobody in your staff told you, after all of what has been testified before this committee, told you about the conflict and you went ahead anyway?
So thank you very much.
Don't give me an appointments process lecture again.
Mr.
Thank you very much.
Just let the witness answer, and that's all the time you have, Mr. Baines.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. As I've indicated before, this appointment was made 5 years ago, I believe, approximately 5 years ago. This is one of a number of appointments that I made as a minister, and I had full confidence in.
You have no responsibility for anything that happened when you were minister.
Mr. Perkins, I'll now turn it over to MP Van Bynen for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it was 30 years as a bank manager, getting engaged with small businesses that have an idea, that want to create jobs. I want to thank you for coming forward to let us know what this program is all about. And I want to make sure that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So thank you very much for having the fortitude to withstand this type of interviewing. And thank you for at least contributing to the positive side of what this corporation can do. Now, we do have the process of incubators, accelerators, angel investors, and venture capital. But I understand that the organizations that you represent are on the incubator side, where there's high risk and low tolerance for risk for anyone other than people who have equity positions. Can you tell me about what the industry does? Like, I'm getting a little frustrated. All we're talking about is money coming out of a corporate spigot. That's not what this is about. This is about investing in ideas. It's about investing in jobs. It's about investing in our international profile and advancing the industry. So is there anyone that can tell me, from your experience, how many jobs have you created, Mr. Khan?
That's it's difficult to come up with a number because we do a lot of contract work externally and spend millions of dollars with contractors in Alberta, Ontario, and elsewhere. So if I had to kind of estimate, we're probably in the triple digits now. So 90 to 100 jobs is probably what we've created. My staff, about 60% of them are PhDs, scientists, researchers. I'd say about 25% are production staff, and then we have all of the in-between, like accounting and...
And what would happen to those assets, those Canadian assets, if you didn't have that corporation?
They likely will leave Canada. I guess our competitors to retain our humans or our human resources are mostly folks in the valley. So the Apples and the Googles of the world would probably pick up our people.
So educated here and make money elsewhere.
Most of these guys are guys and girls are educated in here, and often have masters or PhDs.
Okay. Mr. MacArthur, can you add some of your own experience in terms of what these investments are doing in the industry or in the community or for your companies, the companies that you represent?
So Canada has competitive advantages in a number of areas, and three that I'll highlight are: one is water. More water patents filed in the province of Ontario than any other jurisdiction in the world. Carbon capture, utilization, and storage is going to be key to decarbonizing the industrial sector all across Canada. Cement industry that's located all over, steel industries, the oil and gas sector. Energy storage. There's a phenomenal amount of strength in Canada in energy storage. Batteries, water, variations on themes, recovering waste heat energy, as my esteemed colleague here has talked about. So Canada has some real competitive advantages here, and we, as you said, well, in fact, one of our contributors, Sula Chronopoulos from Aqua Action in Montreal, said Canada threw the baby out with the bathwater when freezing funding at SDTC. There's no good alternative to the SDTC funding for the water sector in Canada, and that's an area that we punch above our weight.
Thank you. Ms. Dubicote, can you add to that?
Sure. I would maybe just add to the fact that we are very competitive right now on the international scene. Canada is perceived as an avant-garde player on many fronts, but that edge is going to be closing very quickly because some countries are investing massively in different subsectors of clean tech. So if the sector is not supported at the right time, and right now, we are going to lose that competitive edge that we have internationally on various fronts.
So in your presentation, your letter dated April 24th, you've indicated that drawn only from the survey of 191 respondents, over 400 million Canadian dollars in investment has been paused or abandoned. Now, is that opportunity lost? Is that opportunity recoverable? And if so, what's the shelf life of those opportunities? So I'm trying to get some sense of urgency in terms of the timeline that you're looking at. Anyone? Go ahead, Ms. Dubé.
Well, out of those 400, it was a combination, really, of projects that were both abandoned or were suspended. We believe that some of them could be recovered, but of those respondents, some have clearly already abandoned some of those projects. So I would say that half of the projects that of the respondents said that they had projects that were suspended or abandoned. So out of those $400 million that we've accumulated through what has been shared, some of them could be recuperated, but some of them can't at this point.
Okay. Mr. McCarthy, can you add to that?
I would just reiterate that some of them have been lost, and some of them there's opportunity to recuperate and build new.
Now, there's talk about realignment of these resources within National Research Council. Do you see that as a benefit? Do you see that would make it a more robust process? Do you feel that the bureaucracy might be a hindrance to the speed that entrepreneurs need? What are your thoughts on this realignment?
A brief response, please.
Well, I think if the expertise that has been developed over the year at SDTC, which, and it was mentioned earlier, it's an arm's length organization that understands the challenges of commercializing a technology. If the expertise that has been gained over the years is transposed or brought over to the new structure, if the funding decisions under all the required guidelines resume very quickly, and if it's not heavier for entrepreneurs and businesses to file for these processes, I think we can say that it could be a good solution. And we'll definitely make sure that we consult with our ecosystem and the members to make sure that we make it a good solution as efficient as possible. But it has to be quick.
Thank you.
Thank you, MP Van Bynen. And it will now be Mr. Cooper. However, Mr. Cooper, before I yield the floor to you, thinking back about what happened earlier with a witness and looking at the record, it's clear to me that you use language that is not conformed to the kind of decorum I try to set in this committee and we try to set as a committee. So I'll just ask you to retract and then we can move on.
I retract.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. You can go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Baines, I'll try again in respect to the question, but you didn't answer of Mr. Perkins, and that is, were you aware of Ms. Verscheren's conflict, namely that her company was receiving money from the Green Slush Fund when you appointed her as chair of the board? Yes or no?
Thank you very much for the question. As I indicated before, and I believe Mr. Noseworthy has said so as well, Ms. Verscheren's business experience in the clean tech sector.
So seeing you're not answering that question, it was a yes or no question. Seeing that, once again, you're not answering questions, I'll move on to a different question. I think the answer is yes to that question, but you just won't admit it because you don't take responsibility. So,
point of order.
Mr. Turnbull, yes.
I don't know whether it's acceptable for Mr. Cooper to both talk over the witness and then answer for them, but I don't think that that's what Mr. Baines said. So I would just say, maybe Mr. Cooper could just allow the witness to respond to his questions. I know that he's framing them as yes or no questions, but perhaps the witness doesn't see it as a yes or no question. So
thank you, Mr. Turnbull, but I give a bit of leeway, especially given we've got an experienced politician as well, Mr. Baines. So I give a bit of leeway, but the general rule is we try to give witnesses as much time for their answers as for the questions. So, Mr. Cooper, please keep that in mind. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will ask the minister another yes or no question of the former minister, a yes or no question. Mr. Baines, have you read the Auditor General's report? Yes or no?
Again, thank you very much for the question. I have not had the opportunity to read the report in its entirety.
Well, I find that incredible, seeing that you're here to answer questions about the corrupt mess that you oversaw as minister at SDTC, the Liberal Green Slush Fund. If you had read the damning Auditor General's report, you would have learned that when Ms. Verscheren was appointed chair, she changed the conflict of interest policy of the Green Slush Fund with respect to the blackout period so that board members could buy shares in companies that they approved monies to within 3 days. Were you aware of that change in the conflict of interest policy by Ms. Verscheren?
Thank you very much for the question. I would say that all designated public office holders understand the rules that they need to follow in terms of the Conflict of Interest Act, and those rules pertain to people who sat on the SDTC board as well.
Well, clearly not, given that there were 188 cases of conflicts of interest involving members of the board and others at the Green Slush Fund. But I ask you again, were you aware of that change in the conflict of interest policy so that board members at the Green Slush Fund could approve funds to certain companies on Monday and buy shares by the end of the week?
This is an arm's length organization that has a mandate from the Act of Parliament, I believe, as I recall in my opening remarks, which was established in 2001 for this organization.
Minister,
and it's very clear
Mr.
the
Baines,
rules.
Mr. Baines, you're an executive at Rogers. Would that fly? Because you know what it sounds like to me? And it doesn't just sound like it to me. I'll call it what it is. It's called insider trading. Does insider trading fly at Rogers?
Thank you very much for the question. I'm delighted to be here today before the committee to answer any questions with respects to Sustainable Development Technology Canada.
I asked you a simple question, and that is, do you think it's acceptable that a conflict of interest policy at the Green Slush Fund that happened under your watch as minister was changed such that board members could vote to funnel taxpayers' money into companies and before week's end buy shares in those companies? Do you think that that is acceptable? Because I will repeat again, I call that, and it is, insider trading.
I believe it's important that all designated public office holders hold themselves to the highest possible standard and follow the rules that are clearly outlined in the Conflict of Interest Act. And that is an expectation that all public office holders should abide by.
Well, Mr. Baines, do you believe that your only role as minister was to appoint members to the board? Is that the only role that you saw with respect to the SDTC and the Green Slush Fund?
So thank you for the question. It is an arm's length organization. The board and management has clear rules of how they should conduct themselves.
Mr. Baines, had you bothered to read the Auditor General's report, you would have discovered that the Auditor General found that your department under your watch completely failed to see that contribution agreements were complied with and completely failed with respect to overseeing conflicts of interest. 188 cases. Taken together, $120 million went out the door. So, do you take issue with the Auditor General's findings, damning findings about failings of your department under your watch as minister?
Thank you very much again for that very important question. And I would say I respect the work of the Auditor General, and I think it's very clear what she stated in that report.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Baines. I'll now turn over to MP Area.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Khan and Mr. MacArthur, coming back to the discussions we previously had, clean tech is certainly not software. It involves hardware, quite a bit of it. And, once in my lifetime, I had a small manufacturing company. And I was being involved in the development of new manufacturing sectors in several countries. Even with commercially proven manufacturing technologies, any capital-intensive, any project with lots of plant and machinery, the gestation period is so high. because of the lot of teething problem, and to see it to come to a industrially accepted capacity utilization rate takes time. And when it comes to new technology, like Mr. Khan, yours now implementing, getting ready to implement, if I'm not wrong, at the oil sands project, how big it is in terms of, if it's not confidential, in terms of dollar amount, and what is the implementation period it takes? And when it comes to financing it, what amount, what percentage of the project cost is getting financed through STDC?
Sure. So I'll do my best to answer the question. I don't have the exact numbers, but we have put in excess of $10 million into developing the technology. It's not solely for the Alberta site. We've done smaller pilots leading to that larger site because our partners wouldn't be interested in something that's completely unproven. And so we've received a small amount of funds from investors in the past, but being a materials technology, we also deploy our materials in medical devices and are fortunate to have revenue that comes from that medical device. And so all of the revenue that we generate, and this medical device is a dental device, so all of the revenue we generate from fixing people's teeth, we funnel to our clean tech application. So I'd say about 60 to 70% of it is funded through investors, as well as revenue generated from other opportunities, so that we can scale our technology.
Mr. MacArthur, in addition to that, I was a member of this committee. I just joined last month, and I was a member of this committee way back in 2015, 2016. Only other member who is still here in this committee is Mr. Brian Massey. During that time, once we had the CEO of BDC, Business Development Canada, here and asked a very simple question. They were talking about portfolios of $1 billion for various sectors of economy, etc. My question was very simple. I asked the team, the BDC team then, how many manufacturing startups you have financed during the last 1 year? They didn't have the answer, and they had to go back, search. Out of the billions of dollars of portfolio they had, they came with an answer. If I remember correctly, it was just about $15 million in new manufacturing startups. So there is a gap here. I'm sure the same thing with the clean tech. You are mentioning the gaps in the ecosystem. So you have got some more time to elaborate on that. Where is the gap and what needs to be done? Is STDC a vehicle through which that gap can be addressed?
Yeah, SDTC does address some of that, for sure. As talked about earlier, taking that first commercialization step, developing consortiums, proving out the technology. There is an abundance of capital available for software solutions. They are low capital intensive solutions. There is a shortage of capital for the hardware solutions. And that's not going away. There are some funds in the US that do specialize in it, and sometimes we're able to track them up to Canada to invest here. But there's often a lack of it. And I'll go back again to those demonstration facilities, that first of kind, FOC being the acronym. It's tough to attract capital there, and we're missing opportunities to deploy innovative solutions that are being developed by smart technology guys like Mr. Khan here and others across Canada, and have them have the impact on our economy, on jobs, and the planet.
Slightly changing the thing. Are there any policy recommendation to the policymakers, whether at the federal level or provincial level, that you suggest that can help clean tech sector grow, including the financing of clean tech sector?
So again, I would say if there was additional funding in the venture capital sector, that could benefit the clean tech space. If there was additional funding available at the seed stage in particular, that's often a challenge. And first of kind, I don't mean to repeat myself, but
So basically, you're saying that we need to have specialized fund specifically for clean tech for the seed capital?
Yes, amongst others.
Amongst others, if you can kindly elaborate. I'm trying to understand.
So for scaling, seed
Yeah.
funding, scaling, Series C, Series D, and also for project finance funding.
Okay.
Those are all gaps. Whether it's fair to expect the Government of Canada to solve all those problems, I don't know. But those are gaps that our industry feels when it goes to get funding.
Ms. Isabel?
Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Area. We're out of time. Monsieur Garon, la parole est à vous.
You have the floor. Thank you, Chair. I would like to come back to what I said earlier to Madame Dubicoté. You represent the clean tech energy in Quebec, and I think it's a lovely industry of the future that needs to get funding. And a large part of the profitability created is something that's effective, that's ecological, and depends on public funding. So my appreciation of the situation is that your industry is the primary victim of what's happening today. If we had had a fund where the management rules were tighter, if we weren't in this situation, Minister Champagne would not have had to suspend the funding. We wouldn't be in the situation that we are in today. I want it to be very clear. And you don't have with you the figure of the number of projects that might have gone forward since we suspended the funding or the number of jobs. And I would like you to give examples of projects, promising projects that might be delayed because we're in this situation of bad fund management of public funds. So I can't do that. I don't have the exact data in terms of the impact. But the survey that we did among around 200 businesses, we received the information that 10% of these companies that had to fire employees, so we don't know in what proportion this was done, but we know that 10% had loss of employment. So we understand the effect of these job losses in terms of SDTC. There were some in the sector. So we talked about the carbon tax, the cap and trade system in Quebec. We had reduced our GHGs, and we have to have innovation. So that's why we need risk capital. The most promising projects in Quebec in your industry, if you could tell us in the last 30 seconds that we have left, what would that be? I would say that locally we have the sector of renewable energy. So energy, batteries, storage, it's a very active field where we're positioning ourselves very carefully. So we have resources that's recognized internationally that we don't notice so much here is water. The treatment of water, conservation of water, that's my personal opinion. We don't carry enough attention to this. And when we go elsewhere and we talk about colleagues in other alliances, other clean tech alliances abroad, it's something that's one of their main concerns. Thank you very much, Mr. Garon. Mr. Massé, you have the floor.
I've been made aware that perhaps that the original selection before Annette Verschuren was Karen Hamburg, selected by yourself, and then maybe later on it was changed, perhaps by the PCO, I don't know. But can you confirm or deny that is the case?
Thanks for the question, Mr. Massey. I don't recall, again, the specific names that were brought forward at that time.
Okay, that's unfortunate. I would like to move to Mr. Noseworthy. You were in the boardroom, and the reason we're here is because the staff were not believed in 2 reports. Did you not notice anything unusual with Annette Verschuren, and can you confirm or deny anything that you saw, or did you report anything back to ISED?
Sir, my experience was that Ms. Verschuren was a reasonable chair and that board meetings were conducted in a responsible way. The specific issues around conflict, as I saw them, were presented, as this table has heard before, by people recusing themselves, and I saw no evidence of any of the specific concerns that were raised by the whistleblower until such time as I saw the whistleblower's report.
And that's hard to believe, but you had a first-class ticket on the Titanic, and you didn't have any evidence that you saw in front of yourself. Do you have, or did you have, any of a social relationship with Annette Verschuren or other board members and attended any events outside the boardroom in a social manner or at a restaurant or some other occasion at special events?
The only specific event that I can recall, sir, was that several years ago, Ms. Verschuren received an honorary degree from Memorial University of Newfoundland. I live in Newfoundland, and she invited me to the convocation with her.
Okay, and that does happen, so I don't want to cast dispersions on that. But at the same time, you never noticed a single, just to confirm, you never noticed a single concern or discussions related to conflict or interest, or even the reports that were done internally here when you were attending all those meetings?
Sir, ISED did not undertake any independent assessments of conflict of interest. We relied on the organization, which had specific responsibility for that, to do so. I relied on what I saw in the board meetings, which was that individual members recused themselves when they had a perceived or possible conflict of interest.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's just very frustrating because we had a person in the room and we have all this abusive behavior. And again, just to, we're here because nobody believed the workers. And that's why they're delayed on their funding, because nobody believed them. And we still don't have a cultural resolution to what took place.
Merci, Monsieur Massé.
Thank you, Mr. Massé. Mr. Perkins, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Incredible, Mr. Noseworthy sat in the committee. The Auditor General pointed out he was there 96 times when they declared a conflict of interest, and they were feeding each other, 5 directors, money. So my question is actually for Mr. Baines. In 2016, you appointed Andre Lise-Mateau to the board, perhaps the most corrupt of all your corrupt appointments. Andre Lise-Mateau had already received, she has a company called Cycle Capital, a venture capital company. She had already, her companies that she has ownership in, had already received $101 million from the Green Slush Fund before you appointed her to the board in breach of the Conflict of Interest Act. Then once on the board, she voted herself $42.5 million into those companies. And then within the year, in the cooling off period where she was supposed to have no contact with them, she got another $8.5 million, $150 million to this one corrupt director that you reported. Are you aware of any of that? Or like everything else, you are doing a Hogan's Hero Sergeant Schultz routine?
Again, thank you very much for the question. During my tenure, I recall making over 100 GIC appointments. There were a number of people that were appointed. I've talked about the process.
And in your opening, you said you were responsible for the appointments, yet you take no responsibility for any of them. Were you aware that Stephen Guilbeault was the lobbyist for Cycle Capital? And in his time as the lobbyist, Cycle Capital received $111 million of grants from SDTC. And in fact, in 2018 and 2019, he met 25 times with industry, your office, and the PMO. Did you ever meet with Stephen Guilbeault before he was elected on these projects? Let me guess, you don't recall.
Well, if anyone did meet with me, there's clear rules and obligations around reporting.
Did you meet with him, yes or no? I would think 25 times of a current environment minister and a nominated candidate in the Liberal Party was in your office, you would recall those meetings.
To the best of my recollection, I don't recall any such meetings. And I would say that, again, this is an arm's length organization. that has a clear mandate of how it conducts itself.
Isn't it convenient that in an arm's length organization, it's Liberals who get appointed to the board through your neutral process? By the way, I'm not sure what PMO appointments does with the many, many people that work in Trudeau's PMO appointments that clear all these things and say to you, we're appointing these Liberals, even though they're corrupt and voted themselves got $100 million. And your current Minister of Environment and this Liberal government lobbied 25 times for the most corrupt of them all, and you say, I don't remember. How many times has it been? 42 times since you've been before this committee that you've said in 2 hours you don't remember. Why would Rogers hire you if you can't remember anything about what you did here? You seem like the most ineffective person if you can't remember your time as a minister and these meetings. It's not about the 100 appointments. When Liberal candidates are in your office lobbying on behalf of Liberal appointments that you made to get $150 million of taxpayer money funneled into their companies to personally benefit from it, this type of Liberal corruption, I guess, is accepted in the Liberal Party. Heck, why would I expect any different from you? You were the guy in charge of reducing cell phone rates and then left office and went to work for the biggest, most expensive cell phone company in the world. You are feather bedding your own corrupt approach to your career, and why would we expect that you would point anyone else that was any different?
Thank you very much for the question. As I've said before, Ms. Verschern and her credentials are well known. She served under Jim Flaherty as an advisor during the financial crisis. She was also appointed, I believe, to the Science, Technology, Innovation Council by Mr. Harper.
I know her resume. We know it well. You can look it up on LinkedIn. I don't need your recitation and defense of her resume. I want your explanation of why you put Andre Lise-Moutot, who had $100 million already from this fund, taxpayer money, on the board so she could steal another $50 million of taxpayer money. Why did you do it?
Okay, and now, Mr. Perkins, that's all the time you had. Please let the witness answer. Mr. Baines, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Individuals that are identified and selected are done through in a very public way. They have to go to the website. They have to download their CV. There's a panel that's established that includes the PCO. These individuals, again, go through that process. Recommendations are made to me. And this was the process that was followed for all the GIC appointments that I made.
Thank you, Mr. Baines. Mr. Turnbull, the floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you for all the witnesses for being here again, or for being here today. I wanted to ask Mr. Noseworthy a question. I know that, maybe I'll start with just saying that SDTC is an arm's length organization that was around for 20 years or so. I understand that that means that the federal minister and his office at the time and that the department wouldn't have been intimately involved in the day-to-day operations of the organization. Because it's arm's length, it was running under a contribution agreement, and I think, but I understand that there's some involvement in terms of reporting requirements, etc. And so I wanted to ask you, Mr. Noseworthy, you know, I note in the report on, I think it's page 18 of the Auditor General's report, that there's mention in 6.52 that the Foundation did not report to the department on about 91 conflicts of interest, and that's documented in the report quite well. So I guess, you know, when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking, okay, how do we make sure this never, some of these governance issues never come up again as we move forward with a new governance model for SDTC, and we've already, the minister has already announced that we're intending to fold it into the NRC, and so I wondered if you could just comment on, you know, how do we ensure that we put more onus on the organization in the future and the people that will be involved in making future decisions, so that this breakdown of communications doesn't happen again.
Sir, my personal view would be the solution to that challenge is to bring the funding more directly within the ambit of government, where the checks and balances and administrative responsibilities of government can fully come into play in the oversight of funds. Foundations like SDTC are strange animals, in my perspective, from a governance perspective. From one side, you want them to be independent. From the other side, there's an expectation of accountability back to government on the funds that they spend. There is always a balance between those two issues, and things will get confused. On that basis, my personal view, sir, would be the cleaner, clearer way to participate in funding by government in future decisions on issues like this is more direct.
Thank you for that. I think that might be informative for us moving forward, coming out of this committee proceeding. I want to go back to Ms. Dubé-Côté and ask you, how big is the market, the potential market for clean tech in Canada? Do we know how much potential there is for growth? Because as we heard before, I think you were clear that SDTC plays a pretty important role. Mr. MacArthur was pretty clear on, the need for that high-risk capital and seed funding as well. But I think there's a few different categories. But Ms. Dubé-Côté, could you speak to market size in the different areas?
Well, the market size is, the potential is probably humongous. Every clean technologies are there to replace more traditional technologies that are less efficient and do not have optimal or have a negative impact on the environment. So any technology that is currently used in the country that could be replaced by clean technology actually represents the market. So
the market sounds like it's very, very large. Mr. MacArthur, do you have any answer to that, given your position?
I've got a couple numbers for you. So,
yeah.
It's been estimated that for Canada to get to net zero, which is one of our objectives if we want to have a livable planet, it's going to take $2 trillion for Canada. For the globe, it's $197 trillion. Now, we can sell to that $197 trillion as well as the $2 trillion in Canada. So, as Isabel was saying, the market potential is huge.
That's the global market size that you're referring to, or
it's
is that
estimated
the amount of capital we need?
It's estimated it'll take $197 trillion of investment for this planet to operate.
Right. And that's to get to net zero by 2050. Is that a total number by then?
There's a range of numbers, and that's one of the numbers I've read.
And then the market size, though, is sort of what I was getting at. I mean, you're saying that that's the investment capital that would be needed. In terms of growth potential for the market, it must be a lot bigger than the capital going into it, would it not?
The spin-off business would be incredible to deploy $197 trillion. It would be phenomenally difficult to do, but these are mammoth opportunities.
And I guess just to put a point on this is that it seems to me that in various ways the Government of Canada has provided or has played a role in the market, in this particular market, to get to net zero because it's in the public interest, and we're de-risking capital in various ways. Would you agree that that's necessary in this particular case? Because you sounded like when you talked about the capital intensity and the risk involved in these clean tech businesses, that it is capital intensive, it is risky, so it might be a role that the Government of Canada has to continue to play. Could you speak to that?
Thank you, Mr. Turnbull, but a brief answer. We're running out of time.
There's certainly a role to be played to get us there, and government funding, other sources of capital are going to be needed for us to get that $2 trillion to get Canada to net zero.
Okay. This concludes our final round of questions. Yes, Mr. Perkins, on point of order.
Given the testimony today and the Auditor General's report this week on the Green Slush Fund, I think incumbent on this committee to call the current Deputy Minister, Assistant Deputy Minister, and CFO of the Industry Department, known as ISED, to answer for the Auditor General report.
So are you, is that a motion that you're moving right now?
Yeah.
Okay, and it's just one. So first thing, you can't move a motion on a point of order, Mr. Perkins.
Okay, well, I'll just withdraw the point of order and move the motion.
Yes. Okay. So you're move. So yeah, I recognize you. Well, you have the floor, so you can move your motion.
So I'll move the motion that we call the Deputy Minister, Assistant Deputy Minister responsible for SDTC, the CFO of the Industry Department, to answer and respond to the 6th report of the Auditor General on the Sustainable Development Technology Canada.
Okay, so members have heard the terms of the motion. I know now it's from the floor, so it's not translated in both official languages, but I'm looking around the room to see if there are any comments on this or objections or...
Could we have this in writing in both official languages, please?
Well, it's we're running towards the end of our meeting, so I don't know if colleagues you want to maybe debate this at the very first item next Monday, or now it'll give members time to think about it and see it in both official languages. Is that the will of the committee? Well, I think when a member is asked to have it in writing in both official languages, I think it's the usual practice that we provide members to do it. So if the committee wants to extend to later so that we get that, but I don't see much enthusiasm for that proposition around the room. So, okay, I'm reading the room. I think it can be discussed on Monday and it can be sent in writing in both official languages. Mr. Perkins, you're good with that? So thank you to our witnesses for being here tonight. Apologies also to Ms. Buller for the problems with communicating with you and for what was, in hindsight, the surely unwarranted and certainly premature summons. So apologies for that. And thank you to the witnesses. Colleagues, as you know, this is my last meeting in person with you until the fall. To say that I will miss you would be a vast overstatement, but at the same time, I'll leave you in the good care of Mr. Perkins, who will be chairing for the next 2 weeks. So thank you, Mr. Perkins, for doing that and chairing on my behalf for the next 2 weeks. I will be watching closely. So thank you very much, Mr. Perkins. So on this note, meeting is adjourned. Thank you, colleagues.